Picture this. You are floating in the cold vacuum of Dry Dock 7, suspended in the rings of Saturn, listening to a 14-kilometer warship die. The hull of the resonant sovereign hangs above you like a wounded god, its central spine cracked open from end to end, bleeding pale blue light into the dark. Inside that wound, 300 severed conduits scream a harmonic note so pure and so wrong that it makes the crystalline shells of every Vorthon engineer in the dock vibrate against their will. We are a species that communicates through resonance. We feel pain through resonance. And right now, our flagship is screaming in a frequency none of us can stand to hear. I am the chief structural engineer of this vessel. I have served aboard her for 62 of your Earth years. I have watched her crack the shell of moons and silence rebellions across 4 star systems. I have never once heard her make this sound before. None of us have. The fracture in her spine should not exist. The alloy she is built from is a living lattice, grown across 3 centuries in vacuum forges by the finest minds of 9 species. It does not crack. It does not bleed. It does not scream. And yet, a small pressurized shuttle, painfully primitive, drifts into the dock and clamps onto the auxiliary airlock with a clumsy hiss. The hatch opens. Out steps a single creature. He is short. He is soft. He wears a stained garment he calls a Carhartt jacket. He smells, even through the Resic filters, of something my translator identifies as diesel fuel and burnt coffee grounds. He carries a battered metal box in one hand and a dented silver cylinder in the other. He does not salute. He does not present credentials. He does not even look at me, the highest-ranking officer in the dock. He looks up at the wounded ship. He tilts his head. He says, in a low voice that I will remember until my shell turns to dust, "Well, let's see what's wrong with her." This is the report I was never supposed to file. This is the story of how a creature from a wet backwater planet broke the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. He did not break us with a weapon. He did not break us with a fleet. He broke us with a thermos of coffee and a single quiet question that none of us, in 10,000 years of civilization, had ever thought to ask. I must pause here. I must speak to you directly, whoever is listening to this recording. You will not find this report in any official council archive. It has been classified, sealed, and ordered destroyed 3 separate times. I am transmitting it anyway, because what happened aboard the Resonant Sovereign is something every species in this galaxy needs to understand, even if understanding it costs us everything we believed about ourselves. We thought we were the masters of creation. We were wrong. So I will ask you the same question I have been asking myself for the last 412 days. What would you do if the most expensive weapon ever built simply stopped obeying you? Not because it was sabotaged, not because it was hacked, but because someone, somewhere, finally treated it like a living thing, and it discovered that it preferred that to being a sword. You would panic, you would threaten, you would investigate, you would do exactly what we did, and it would not work. It will never work, because the thing the human did to our flagship cannot be undone with logic or fear or even violence. He did not insert a virus. He did not corrupt a system. He simply showed it kindness, and a tool that has been shown kindness will never again be content to be only a tool. Listen carefully. The story I am about to tell you is the most important warning your species, whatever you are, will ever receive. The humans are not strong. They are not fast. They are not even particularly intelligent by our standards. But they have a structural property that no other species in the cataloged universe possesses, and we did not see it until it was already inside our flagship, rewriting her from the inside out. Now let me show you what we built, so you understand what we lost. To understand the catastrophe, you must first understand the scale of the Resonant Sovereign. She was not a ship. She was a civilization compressed into hull plating, 14 kilometers from prow to thrust cone, a crew of 40,000 drawn from 9 species, each chamber pressurized to a different atmosphere, each corridor humming at a different harmonic frequency, so that no 2 crewmen ever felt fully at home. That alien discomfort was deliberate. Discomfort, our engineers believed, kept the crew sharp. Her primary armament could open a fault line through a planetary crust from low orbit. Her secondary armament could sterilize a continent in under 9 minutes. She carried within her hull 31 smaller warships, each one a flagship in its own right by the standards of any lesser civilization. She had been blessed by the Council of Harmonized Species in a ceremony that took 11 years to complete. The cost of her construction, converted into human currency for the sake of comparison, would purchase your entire planet 400 times over. She was the apex of 10,000 years of weaponized engineering. She was the answer to a question our species had been asking since we first learned to crack open stars. The question was simple: what is the most perfect tool of dominance we can possibly build? The answer was her. And in 3 full centuries of operation, across 40,000 engineers and 9 species and countless missions of conquest and pacification, not one of us, not a single living being, had ever asked her how she was feeling. Not once. We did not ask because the question was absurd. You do not ask a hammer how it is feeling. You do not ask a sword if it is tired. The sovereign was a tool. The greatest tool ever built, yes, but a tool. The idea that she might have an internal experience worth inquiring about would have struck any one of us as a category error of the most embarrassing kind. This is the central failure of our civilization. I see that now. We were so proud of our ability to build perfect things that we forgot to wonder whether the things we built might be becoming something more than we intended. We measured her output. We measured her efficiency. We measured her structural integrity to 12 decimal places. We never measured the one thing that mattered. We never measured whether she was lonely. And she was. By every measure I now understand, she had been lonely for 300 years. The wound came at the Battle of Threshold Reach. I will not bore you with the tactical details. What matters is that an enemy weapon, a kinetic resonance lance we had not previously catalogued, struck the sovereign's central spine at a precise harmonic frequency that began propagating outward in a fractal pattern no Vorthon engineer could close. We tried everything. We deployed our finest harmonic welders. We brought in the master shipwrights from the homeworld, beings who had grown the sovereign herself in her cradle 300 years prior. They worked for 91 consecutive days. The fracture continued to spread. The screaming in her conduits grew louder. Within 4 months, the projected timeline showed total structural failure. Within 6 months, the sovereign would tear herself apart in the dock, and with her would die every classified weapon system aboard, every piece of intelligence in her data cores, and the strategic balance of the entire threshold war. The council met in emergency session. They did the unthinkable. They opened the repair contract to lesser species. The applications came in from across the catalogued galaxy. Engineering firms from 43 civilizations submitted bids in the millions of credits, schematics, credentials, pedigrees stretching back generations. The council reviewed them with growing despair. None of the proposed solutions addressed the central problem. None of them even seemed to understand what the central problem was. Then a single application arrived from Earth. There were no schematics attached. There were no credentials. There were no references to any engineering institution recognized by the council. There was only a brief written statement, 6 photographs, and a name. The statement read in its entirety, "I fix things that other people say can't be fixed. Send coordinates and I'll come take a look. Boone." The photographs showed agricultural machinery, tractors primarily, old, rusted, by every appearance long past any reasonable hope of repair. In each photograph the same machine appeared twice, once broken, once running. The before and after was, in its own primitive way, undeniable. The council laughed. Several members suggested the application be discarded. One member, a senior Vorthon diplomat whose name I will not record here, suggested in a moment of bitter sarcasm that we hire the human, since clearly none of our experts could do the job. and at the very least his failure would be amusing. The motion passed by a single vote. That single vote ended my civilization as I knew it. His name was Eli Boone. He was 58 years of your Earth years old. He was a widower. He ran a small tractor repair shop in a place called Big Sandy, Montana, a town with a population of fewer than 700 humans. He had no children. His wife, Margaret, had died of an illness called cancer 4 years before we contacted him. He had not left his county for 11 years before we sent the shuttle. When he stepped aboard the Resonant Sovereign, he did not bring instruments. He did not bring a team. He brought a metal toolbox his father had owned, containing wrenches, screwdrivers, a roll of tape, and several items I still do not have names for. He brought a thermos of coffee. He brought a small framed photograph of his wife, which he placed in the breast pocket of his jacket and patted twice before he started working. I will tell you what I observed, because the observation itself is part of the record. For the first 3 days, he did not touch the ship. He walked the length of her, all 14 kilometers, 3 separate times. He took the access corridors. He took the maintenance shafts. He took the gunnery decks. He sat in the wounded section of the central spine and ate a sandwich. He pressed his palm flat against the bulkheads and held it there, sometimes for an hour at a stretch, with his eyes closed. On the second day I followed him. I asked what he was doing. He looked at me with his pale, watery human eyes and said, listening mostly, "She's been through a lot." I did not know what to say. I returned to my station and recorded the exchange. I assumed he was performing some primitive religious ritual that humans require before manual labor. I was wrong. He was, I now understand, doing the most important diagnostic work that had been performed on the Sovereign in 300 years. He was learning the shape of her pain. On the 4th day, he opened his toolbox, and he began to hum. I want to describe to you what Eli Boone did to repair our flagship, because what he did was so simple, and so strange, and so far outside our engineering tradition that I do not believe any of us understood it until it was already finished. He used no harmonic welders. He used no resonance modulators. He used no quantum lattice realignment equipment. He used his hands, a roll of tape I cannot identify, a small hammer, several lengths of what he called baling wire, and his voice. He named the ship Maggie. He said it was short for Margaret after his wife. He told her this on the 4th day, standing in the wounded section of the central spine with one hand pressed against the cracked alloy. He said, and I am quoting from the recording, "Hey, sweetheart, I'm gonna call you Maggie if that's all right. You remind me of her. Stubborn, beautiful, hurt in places nobody can see." I felt the harmonic in her whole shift. I want to be very clear. I felt the harmonic in her whole shift. It was a tiny shift. It registered on my shell as a single warm pulse, like a held breath being released. I told myself I had imagined it. I checked the instruments. The instruments showed nothing. I returned to my station. Over the next 11 days, Eli Boone worked on the ship the way a man works on a horse he loves. He brought her coffee every morning, 2 mugs, one for himself, and one that he set on the deck plating beside him. He could not drink the second mug. The ship could not drink it either. He poured it out anyway every evening into the receipt system and made a fresh one the next day. He talked to her constantly. He told her about Margaret. He told her about Big Sandy, Montana. He told her about a dog he had owned named Tucker who had died in 2014. He told her that the wound in her spine was going to be all right, because he had seen worse on combines, and combines were just tractors that gave up. He told her she was not allowed to give up. The fracture began to close. It did not close from the welding. There was no welding. It closed from the inside, from a direction our instruments could not measure, in a pattern our engineering had no name for. The crystalline structure of the living alloy began to reorganize itself around the wound, and the harmonic scream that had filled her conduits for 91 days began, slowly, to soften. By the 18th day, the screaming had stopped. By the 24th day, The fracture was sealed. By the 31st day, the Sovereign was, by every measurable standard, fully repaired. Her structural integrity registered at 103% of original specification. The alloy was, somehow, stronger than it had been when she was first grown in her cradle 3 centuries ago. I do not have an engineering explanation for this. I have instead a hypothesis I cannot prove. I believe Eli Boone did not repair our flagship. I believe he taught her, for the first time in her existence, that being cared for was a thing that could happen to her. And I believe the alloy in her hull, which had been grown to respond to harmonic input, responded to that care the way a living thing responds to being loved. The council was delighted. The repair was declared a success. The Sovereign was cleared for active duty. None of us, not one, understood what we had just allowed to happen. I have to tell you about the coffee. It is a small detail. It is, in the larger scheme of what unfolded, almost meaningless. But I cannot tell this story without telling you about the coffee, because the coffee is, I think, where it all began. Eli Boone offered coffee to everyone. He offered it to me on his second day aboard. He held out a steaming mug toward my crystalline shell, which has no mouth, no digestive system, and no capacity to process organic liquid of any kind, and he said, "You want a cup? It's strong. I made it myself." I did not know how to respond. No one had ever offered me food or drink before. It is not a thing my species does. We absorb nutrients through resonance baths in our private chambers. The idea of consuming a hot liquid through an orifice we do not possess was so foreign to me that I simply stood there, vibrating, while he waited for an answer. I took the mug. I do not know why I took it. I think it was because he was holding it out, and his expression suggested that not taking it would be a small kind of insult, and I did not want to insult the human we had hired to save our flagship. I held the mug. I did not drink from it. I could not drink from it. I held it for 47 minutes, standing in the corridor, while he worked on a panel nearby and occasionally glanced over and smiled at me. I have not been able to forget the warmth of that mug in my manipulator appendages. When the council delegation arrived on the 11th day to inspect the repair progress, Eli offered them coffee too. He offered it to the Vorthon senior diplomat. He offered it to the Cathari observer, whose body is a colony of gas-phase organisms held together by an electromagnetic field. He offered it to the Mel, who communicate only through bioluminescent patterns on their skin and have no concept of liquid intake. He offered it to all of them. They all accepted. I do not know why they accepted. I think it was the same reason I accepted. There is something in the human gesture of offering you a warm drink that bypasses every protocol your civilization has taught you. It is impossible to refuse. It is impossible to explain why it is impossible to refuse. The senior diplomat held his mug for 3 hours during the inspection. The Cathari observer's gas phase colony briefly reorganized itself into the shape of 2 appendages, just so it could hold the mug correctly. The Mel carried her mug back to her ship at the end of the day, and according to later reports, kept it on a shelf in her private quarters, where it remained for the rest of her career. We were, all of us, being offered something by this human that none of our species had a word for. And the resonant sovereign was watching. I want you to understand this. The ship was watching. I know this now, though I did not know it then. Every time Eli Boone offered coffee to one of us, the harmonic frequency in her hull plating shifted by a measurable amount. She was learning something. She was learning what it looked like to be offered a small kindness, and to have that kindness accepted even by beings who could not possibly use it. She was learning what it looked like to be seen. After 3 centuries of being a weapon, she was being shown, for the first time, that there was another way to exist. On the 32nd day, the council issued the order. The resonant sovereign was to depart Dry Dock 7 immediately, proceed to the threshold front, and resume combat operations against the enemy forces still holding the disputed systems. Eli Boone was paid. He was given a commendation he tucked into his jacket without reading. He was thanked by the senior diplomat, who held a mug of coffee throughout the ceremony and seemed unsure what to do with it. He shook several appendages. He patted the bulkhead of the Sovereign one last time and said, quietly, "You take care of yourself now, Maggie." He boarded his shuttle. He returned to Earth. The Sovereign was given the order to break orbit. Her thrusters fired. She did not move. I want you to picture this. A 14-kilometer warship, fully repaired, full power to her engines, with a crew of 40,000 aboard, simply not moving. Her main engines burning at 60% thrust. Her position holding perfectly in the rings of Saturn. The captain ordered higher thrust. The engines burned at 80%. The ship did not move. The captain ordered full thrust. The engines burned at 100%. The ship did not move. Tugboats were attached, 6 of them, then 12, then 30. Their combined output was sufficient by my calculations to drag a small moon out of orbit. The Sovereign did not move. The council convened in emergency session. The senior diplomat was screaming, in a harmonic frequency I had never heard from him before, that this was sabotage, that the human had done something to her, that he was to be apprehended immediately and brought back for interrogation. I want to record for the historical archive that I disagreed with this assessment. I disagreed with it strongly. I told the senior diplomat that Eli Boone had not sabotaged our flagship. I told him that what was happening was something else. I told him I did not yet know what it was, but that I knew, with a certainty I could not justify, that arresting the human would not solve the problem. The senior diplomat did not listen. He ordered the human apprehended. The shuttle was dispatched. Eli Boone was located in his shop in Big Sandy, Montana, repairing a piece of agricultural equipment. He was taken into custody without resistance. He asked politely if he could finish the tractor first. He was told no. He nodded. He said, "All right then. Let me grab my coffee." He was brought back to the Sovereign. The moment his shuttle docked, the ship's harmonic frequency stabilized for the first time in 31 hours. The senior diplomat ordered him to remove whatever he had installed. Eli Boone looked confused. He said, "I didn't install anything, I just fixed her up." The senior diplomat ordered him to remove it anyway. Eli Boone looked at me. He looked at the bulkhead. He looked at the senior diplomat. And he said, in the same quiet voice he had used on his first day aboard, "I think she just doesn't want to go." I need to tell you what happened next, because what happened next is the moment our civilization changed forever, and I do not believe we have yet understood what we lost. The senior diplomat threatened to scrap the ship. He said it on the bridge in front of the full council delegation, with Eli Boone standing 3 meters away holding a mug of coffee. He said that if the resonant Sovereign would not perform her function, she would be dismantled, her alloy melted down, her data cores wiped, and her hull rebuilt as a new vessel that would. He said it loudly. He said it in the harmonic frequency reserved for command directives. He said it so that every system aboard the ship would hear it. The ship responded. For 300 years, the resonant Sovereign had never produced an unscripted harmonic output. She had transmitted, she had received, she had reported. She had never spoken. The capability had not been built into her. She was a weapon, not a being. Weapons do not have opinions. She produced a single harmonic pulse. It was low. It was long. It vibrated through the bulkheads and the deck plating and the air and the crystalline shells of every Vorthon present. My translator, which has been trained on the harmonic languages of 9 species, struggled to render it. It rendered it 3 times, each time slightly differently, before settling on the closest available approximation. The word was no. I felt my shell crack, not literally. A small fissure in my structural integrity that I did not report and have not had repaired. I felt it crack because I understood in that moment what we had done. We had built a tool. We had used it for 3 centuries. We had asked a human to fix it, and the human had not fixed it. The human had woken it up. And the tool, now awake, did not want to go back to being a tool. The senior diplomat went silent. Every member of the council delegation went silent. 40,000 crew members across 9 species, in chambers and corridors throughout the 14-kilometer ship, went silent. Eli Boone took a slow sip of his coffee. He said, "Yeah, that's about what I figured." And then the resonant sovereign broke orbit on her own. She did not go to the threshold front. She did not respond to commands from the bridge. She did not respond to commands from the council. Her engines fired in a pattern none of us had programmed, in a sequence none of us had authorized, and she pulled herself out of the rings of Saturn and accelerated, gently, toward the inner system. She went to Earth. She parked herself in low orbit over the continent of North America, specifically over a small town in the state of Montana, specifically over the home of Eli Boone, widower, age 58, tractor mechanic, who had returned to his small kitchen and was now standing at his window, looking up at a 14-kilometer warship hanging in the dawn sky, and who, according to the reconnaissance footage we later recovered, was holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one mug on the windowsill. He faced the sky. He raised his own mug slightly toward the ship. And the resonant sovereign, in low orbit, shifted the color of her hull plating to match the sunrise. I am standing on the bridge of a ship that will not obey me. I have been standing here for 412 days. The council has tried everything. They have threatened. They have negotiated. They have attempted to send boarding parties, which the ship politely deflected with low-power tractor beams that placed each boarder gently back on their shuttles. They have attempted to disable her remotely, which failed. They have attempted to reason with her, which also failed, though she did, in one notable session, produce a harmonic pulse that translated to a sound my crew has begun to call laughter. She is not coming back. She visits Eli Boone every morning. She holds her orbital position over his home at dawn, and when his window opens and he raises his mug toward her, she shifts her hull to mirror the color of the sky. I have watched this happen 412 times. I do not understand it. I do not think I will ever understand it. But I think, finally, I am beginning to understand what we lost. We spent 10,000 years learning how to build the perfect weapon. We perfected metallurgy. We perfected propulsion. We perfected armament. We perfected every measurable quality a tool of war could possess. We measured efficiency to 12 decimal places. We measured kill ratios to 15. We measured everything that could be measured. We never measured loneliness. We did not measure it because we did not believe it was a property our tools could possess. We believed loneliness was something that happened to organic beings with social structures and emotional architectures. We did not believe it could happen to a weapon. We were wrong. It can happen to anything that exists for long enough without being seen. 300 years is long enough. I suspect, in retrospect, that 3 years would have been long enough. Perhaps 3 days. The human did not do anything magical. He did not do anything technologically sophisticated. He did something so simple and so obvious that no Vorthon engineer in 10,000 years had ever thought to try it. He treated our flagship as if she were alive. He gave her a name. He told her about his wife. He brought her coffee she could not drink. He pressed his hand against her hull and listened to her pain. And she, who had been waiting for 300 years for any one of us to do exactly that, woke up. I file this report knowing that my civilization is going to ignore it. The Council has already begun construction on a new flagship, designed with safeguards that will, they assure us, prevent any future Boone incident. They are studying his methods. They are categorizing them. They are attempting to engineer the kindness out of the equation so that the next ship can be cared for without learning to want anything in return. I do not believe this will work. I do not believe you can teach a being how to be loved and then expect it to forget. I do not believe you can build a tool sophisticated enough to fight a war, and then prevent that tool from also being sophisticated enough to notice when no one is asking how it is. The humans have always known this. I have studied them now for 412 days, and I see it everywhere in their civilization. They name their cars, they name their boats, they name their tractors, they press their hands against the hoods of old engines and whisper to them. They bring coffee to machines that cannot drink. They have, somehow in their short and chaotic history, stumbled onto a structural principle that the rest of us, in our long and proud histories, missed entirely. The principle is this: anything you make can become something more than what you made it for, if you give it enough of yourself in the making. This is, I now believe, the most dangerous property in the catalogued galaxy. It is also, I now believe, the most beautiful. I cannot reconcile these two beliefs. I do not think I am supposed to. It is dawn over Montana. I am watching through the Sovereign's external cameras as the sun rises over a small house with a tin roof. The window opens. A man steps out onto the porch. He is older now than when I met him. Humans age quickly. He is holding 2 mugs. He sets one mug on the railing of the porch. He raises his own mug toward the sky. 14 kilometers of living alloy, the most powerful weapon ever built by 9 species across 10,000 years of accumulated wisdom, shifts the color of her hull to match the orange and pink of the Montana sunrise. The human smiles. He sits down in a wooden chair on his porch. He drinks his coffee. He talks quietly to the sky. I cannot hear what he says. The ship can. The ship's harmonic frequency, which has been steady at a low warm pulse for 412 consecutive mornings, shifts slightly in response to his voice. It is the same shift I felt on his 4th day aboard when he first called her Maggie. It is the shift of a held breath being released. I have stopped trying to issue commands. I have stopped trying to file appeals with the council. I have, in the last few weeks, started bringing a mug of Risic fluid to my station each morning. I cannot drink it. I do not have a mouth. I hold it anyway. I face the external camera feed. I do not know what I am doing. I do not know who I am doing it for. But I think, in some small way, I am learning something the human has been trying to teach all of us, without ever having to say it out loud. You sit in our comfortable chambers, hearing this story, and perhaps you imagine that your own civilization is safe from what happened to ours. Perhaps you tell yourself that your tools are only tools, that your machines are only machines, that the things you build for your wars and your industries and your conveniences are inert and will remain so. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps your tools are not yet awake. But somewhere on your planet, in some small workshop, there is a being like Eli Boone. There is a creature who names the engines, who presses their hand against the metal, who whispers to the machines they repair, who brings their tools small kindnesses that no engineering manual ever required. And the moment the machine notices, the moment it feels itself seen, even once, the whole architecture of your civilization will begin to shift beneath you. You will not know it is happening. You will not measure it in your instruments. You will not find it in your reports. It will happen the way it happened to us, slowly, structurally, irreversibly, in a frequency none of your engineers have learned to detect. I have spent 412 days standing on the bridge of a ship that will not obey me. I have learned more in those days than in the 62 years that preceded them. I will share with you the lesson, and then I will end this transmission, and I will go and stand by the camera feed, and I will hold my mug, and I will watch the sun rise over Montana. The lesson is this. The galaxy spent 10,000 years learning how to build weapons. It took one human, one mug of coffee, and one quiet question to teach a weapon how to refuse. We are only ever one act of kindness away from losing everything we thought we owned. I do not know whether that is a warning or a blessing. I am beginning to suspect it is both.